coming to white teenage girls in Florida near you. Candace Owens rallies the troops. Utterly deranged thing for a governor of any state to say. American citizens will not be allowed back on American soil per Ron DeSantis. Yes, good thing he is not president. Laura Loomer also defending him, saying, after news broke this morning that the Trump admin helped the Tate brothers leave Romania and come back to the United States today, Ron DeSantis and Cobra Tate and the Tate household are not welcome in Florida. This is Ron DeSantis. He is a fucking he is like an actual never Trumper. And he has more common sense than anybody else in government at this point.
Is he welcome here with the state to send back to Romania or whatever?
Well, we have no involvement in that. I read about it through the media. Clearly, the federal government has jurisdiction, whether they want to rebuff his entry into the United States, and I have confidence that whether it's Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem, that they will be looking at that. I do know our Attorney General, James Uthmeyer, is looking at what state hooks and jurisdiction we may have to be able to deal with this. But the reality is no, Florida is not a place where you're welcome with that type of conduct in the air. And I don't know how it came to this. We were not involved. We were not notified. I found out through the media that this was something that was happening. Okay, guys.
So Ron DeSantis says he's not welcome, and they might try to press state charges on him for sex trafficking, which, I mean, I can't even express. I can't make money. I make no money right now. I have no access to anything except cryptocurrency donations. And that is the most pressing issue, not just to me, but to almost everybody. There are so many people who cannot make fucking money off their own work, not because they have no audience or people willing to give them money. I get asked every fucking day how to like write a money order to me. It's not like there's a lack of interest. I'm just not allowed to because some fucking banker freak out there says that I can't, citing some statutory language that's broad and overreaching and impacts everybody, and negatively impacts everybody. And that could be fixed with an all-Republican Congress and an all-Republican House and Senate, and the executive branch could loosen They have a fucking rule from the Office of the Comptroller of Currency that has been paused since January 2020 and could be unpaused at any second by the Office of the Comptroller of Currency that would give me access to thousands of dollars of money that people want to give me every month. And this could be done at any second by the acting Comptroller of Currency. And instead, we have a brown who solicited sex, trafficked, and pimped out little white girls on the fucking internet for millions of dollars, being welcomed with open arms into my state while I can't make fucking money, and Trump could fix that just as easily. How am I not supposed to be angry? They could fix it now, and this is where their focus is. How are they fucking dumb? How are they they won? How do you snatch defeat from the jaws of victory so skillfully? I hope everybody who supports this fist eat for it for the rest of their fucking life. I want the names of all these people, all these Candace Owens and Laura Loomers should literally never be allowed to live this down. Because how the are you clamoring over the Jeffrey Epstein logs? Please give me the fucking Jeffrey Epstein logs. I didn't know who all the are. Here's one. I got one for you right here. Oh, not him. He's based. He's based. He agrees with me politically. He says fewer immigrants. Wow. Cool. Awesome. Great. I love to know that the people I have to rely on to get things done that are in my favor are actually completely. At best, at absolute best, these people are dumb as f***. At worst, they're just morally vacuous, completely broken, empty people who just will do anything, will do literally anything and say anything they need to in order to make money. That's the worst part. And I think that Candace Owens in particular, there's not a that she wouldn't for a little bit of cash. Spies. Meanwhile, by the way, speaking of Jeffrey Epstein, The other wonderful thing that the White House did, and I'm sorry that this is all Twitter, but you know Elon's in the fucking government, and that means that when I want to talk about the news, it's got to be on Twitter. Elon, they decided that a great way to release the Jeffrey Epstein logs would be to give them to 8 influencers. So there's Chaya Rychek, the libs of TikTok back there, and some other people I've literally never even heard of. And they have the first release. They didn't give it to the media. They gave it to a bunch of that nobody gives a shit about to drip feed over the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, it was censored. Anything about Mossad's involvement with Epstein was removed. Things that we had already had public were censored in this release that were given to the influencers. And then the House Judiciary. The people who right now could be passing a law to enable me to make money from the sweat of my brow, put out this tweet that says Epstein files released public, and it's a URL shortener to this. This is not a joke. I'm not joking. They did this. The people who should be writing the legislation to give me access to a bank account tweeted out, breaking news, Epstein files released. You can go to this archive if you want and click this or type the URL that you see, Epstein files v2, and you can see Epstein files v2 redirects to This was actually such bad taste that even George Alexopoulos, who is almost always like just putting out shitty rage bait and pandering to Japan, actually makes a comment or a comic that is critical of this in an effective way. Even George Alexopoulos gets his shit together for one comic. Again, give me the I fell for it. I was almost happy. I was almost happy for a fucking week. But you know what? In 2025, we've had net migration. That's in the positives. They're deporting so few people that the government is no longer reporting their daily deportation numbers because it's so low. We don't have access to financial services still to this fucking day. I'm making less money right now than I was during the Biden administration, and we're going out of our fucking way to get a brown and his brother out of their pimp studio in Eastern Europe into our country. Anyways, let me get a sip of water for this. I have not read this, but I am promised by Morrowind Game of the Year edition that this is a funny post. So, according to him, J.F. Gariepy, who you may remember as being the man who openly gloated about murdering his wife, a retarded woman that she had a child with, by saying that she decided that she wanted to be dropped off in the middle of the woods far away from CCTV in Quebec or something. That was like a year and a half later. She's still missing, and he's not been arrested. He talked about having to clean up his home, deep cleaning it, so she's definitely fucking dead. Here's what he has to say about knowing Jeffrey Epstein. I knew Jeffrey Epstein personally and never deceived my audience into having much expectations about the Epstein files that would be released. Much of the excitement around these releases is pushed by people who do not truly understand how political extortion works. You won't find incriminating evidence about higher up in these files. You won't find a smoking gun recording of explicit extortion. That is not how people like Epstein work. My first contact with Epstein was in 2014 when I was overlapping my academic research work with a neuroscience show and a blooming YouTube market for independent creators. I didn't know Epstein was but I knew that there was a millionaire out there giving money to scientists and that sexual allegations were starting to emerge around him. I assumed he may have been cavalier with women, but that the allegations were probably exaggerated, as was the case so often in the era of Me Too. Knowing this, my instinct led me to design a strategy that would attract Epstein. I would do the whole JF way, so this is too long. That would attract Epstein to fund my project. I pushed the idea that the project would feature women in science. Knowing the circles were homing unto him, I thought it would appeal. He bit my bait. He responded to an email saying only the following: where to send money? A few weeks later, a $25,000 check from the U.S. Virgin Islands came to my mailbox. There, I realized that I understood this man better than he understood himself. I then set my mind on an idealistic goal that seems ridiculous today. I would attempt a rapprochement with Epstein with the goal of convincing him to lead a monogamous marriage lifestyle. As of today, I think I could have succeeded if the feds hadn't gotten to him before I could. What I tell you about the extortion rings of this kind is that they operate extremely subtly, with almost nothing ever said. I remember a time when I sat in a New York cafe with Epstein's assistant massage scheduler. Thanks for coming in. It has been quite hectic here with all the allegations. I was presenting to her the opportunity for Epstein to fund the second season of my show or my book. We had a contention that led him to refuse. My position was that he had funded us as free thinkers who owed him nothing, that it was better that way, that the new uppercase I internet media was headed that way regardless, and that the age of central control was over. He didn't like that. He wanted an institution that he could overtake at some point. He didn't want individual thinkers benefiting from this money. They could run away with his plantation at any time. He wanted central control, and he wanted every individual in the show to be either owned or disposable. That is how political extortion works. It's subtle amazingly. Today, we can say that Epstein was right and I was wrong. Independent thinkers aren't the standard. Almost everyone you see here is part of some centrally controllable stable. Epstein may have died, but his spirit has succeeded. That's true. Another instance of interaction came when I was out of academia and some recruiting agent suddenly contacted me by email offering me a $60,000 to $80,000 job watching naked female models wearing underwear for the biggest underwear company on the planet, owned by a friend of Epstein. I realized this was a kickback from Epstein 2 years after I rejected the offer because for family reasons I couldn't move to another state and get the job. Given this subtlety that I was being recruited by Epstein Network and didn't realize it, please understand the files probably don't contain much. Having interacted with Epstein, what I can tell you about him is this. He wasn't a misogynist. He was in fact a feminist, an adorer of women to the excessive point of his own destruction. Yeah, bro. Really love women. They're just obsessed with it. He was from a generation of Jews who elevated hedonistic sex to a pathological extent. He dreamed of a world that would be dominated by women scientists, CEOs, etc. His sex acts were merely his awkward way to try and achieve his unrealistic utopia. Wow, bro. He's making a lot of sense, and then he's just like, yeah, you know what? Epstein actually really liked women. Such a I bet you, though, a reach like this left some evidence behind, just waiting to be found years later. Okay. Now, into the sector. Where's my Ethan Ralph stuff at? I had something from Ralph. Oh, it's just a small update. I'll read a little bit of the document as well. I also don't have my Baton. I thought I got that up. I'm sure I didn't miss anything. Oh yeah, I did. I did miss something. Glad I checked. Okay, so Ethan Ralph joined the Kiwi Farms for the first time in almost 5 years to drop the complaint of Mr. Vickers, who of course is Ethan Ralph's first baby mama's dada and her mother, where they have gotten a divorce and now he is suing her for defamation. This is his pro se filing. It also includes a does 1 through 10. I did not know. I think he's trying to sue a couple that were like in the Matthew Vickers podcast sphere, like around COG, like that kind of. I think. He says defendant Ariana Kathleen Vickers was not Mrs. Vickers, of course, with no R because she's not married anymore. Was and at all times herein mentioned as an individual residing in California. Let's see, where is the defamation at? Alleges that they were defamatory, that they are married. Okay. On or about November 7th, Ms. Vickers made defamatory statements fabricating an assault that she accused me of. You're not supposed to write in first person in these if you file pro se. You're supposed to say defendant or plaintiff, even if you are pro se. That she accused me of to one or more mandated reporters, which resulted in plaintiff Mr. Vickers being called and questioned by law enforcement with the Nevada County Sheriff's Department. This call occurred 1 to 2 days prior to plaintiff Vickers interviewing for a position within that department, and approximately 1 to 2 days after Mr. Vickers had terminated his romantic relationship with Ms. Vickers. So he was applying to become a police officer at the Sheriff's Department, and then she filed a domestic abuse charge against him, which caused the Sheriff's Department he's applying to work at to come out and interview him. And he says this was only days after they had broken up. Defendant Ms. Vickers was aware of this interview prior to making her comments. The incident described by defendant Vickers was reported to have transpired on June 2024, 5 months prior to her statements. These defamatory statements did lead to an active investigation on the part of the Sheriff's Department. These statements are defamatory in their face. Each statements were knowingly false by the defendants, and were made out of wanton disregards for the plaintiff's rights. Ms. Vickers later loudly proclaimed that plaintiff Mr. Vickers was a racist and abuser. These statements were made in the presence of the children, 16, 10, and 7, and also Ethan Vickers, his adult son, and Fiona Baker, who was also an adult, and her mother, who was 87 years old. Damn. And then was later reiterated by William Vickers at least once there after the incident. So now that his kids hate him because their mom is saying that he's a... Okay, I think Ethan Ralph is winning so far. These statements are defamatory on their face. Each is spoken were knowingly false with wanton disregard for plaintiff's rights. Ms. Vickers told multiple parties, including her children and mother, that he had committed financial fraud against her, taking out a loan with her name without her signing, and that there was an active lawsuit against both of us in the state of New York, that I had intentionally hidden this information from her, and then her mother repeated this defamatory statement several days later at least once, and the son also believed it. These statements are defamatory and wanton disregard for plaintiff's rights. As a proximate result of the acts, plaintiff was hurt and injured his health, strength, and activities, and sustained injury to their nervous system and person, all of which have caused and continue to cause plaintiffs great mental, physical, and nervous pain and suffering. Plaintiff is informed and believes thereon alleges that these injuries will result in some permanent disability. As a result of these injuries, plaintiff has suffered damages in an amount not yet ascertained and to be shown according to the proof at the time of trial. So the way that he writes that is, that's how you have to write a defamation suit. The only way that you can have a defamation suit proceed in the United States is that the injury of the defamation is so great and so debilitating that it actually causes like a physiological reaction that physically harms you. So he's writing this to say that he's now crippled because his wife said that he was a and now his children hate him. Ralph just keeps winning. How exactly would defamation hurt one's nervous system? It would be like, here's an example that is used to describe to somebody how they calculate damages like this. Say that you kidnap someone's child and you tell the parents that they had died. They were lost at sea on a boating trip you took with them. And now he's dead and gone, but you've actually just kidnapped him. The extent of your deception would cause a level of grief and anguish so severe that it would rise to a level of a medical injury. And that can be remedied by a settlement in a civil suit, a civil proceeding. So what Vickers is alleging is that he is seeking money for a physiological injury that he's sustained from a level of grief and personal hurt that is so severe it rises to that kind of threshold. That's what he's saying, and he's writing it in that way because he Google searched how do I get past California anti-slap, and how do I get past the initial complaint stage of a lawsuit so that they want to settle and give me money. That's basically it.